Hello and welcome to the delicious recipe here on UPRN. We're out of New Orleans. I'm in Thunder Bay, and I have a guest there that's down in the States. I believe it's Plymouth, Massachusetts. But before we get to that, I want to say thank you to Hey You, Kitty Pot, and our new flavor of the month there. Let me see if I get this right there, Blaze. And thank you very much there. Last week, Shannon Casey, that was listening on the show that when I had Laura Lee from the Angel Rock on here, she gave the name Blaze. So these are the three people that go and help with the research. They help with monitoring the ones and twos. They're my background people, and you'll always see them back there. And I want to thank Shannon Casey again there for helping with that there. If you're listening along, you can check us out on any platform that's going on there. We're on everything there: iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, iHeart. I've probably mentioned that. Also on YouTube. And if you're looking and want to watch on live on YouTube, we are on UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, and also on UFO Paranormal. UFO Paranormal, it's done twice, and that's a UPRN site. And also become a member on UPRN. There's extra bonus content that you can check out there as well. And there's lots of different shows that are on here dealing with a wide variety of things and a lot of really interesting guests. And it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so tonight I want to thank my guest. She's an author, a former lawyer, I believe, and she'll tell you a little bit more about that. Her name is Kathy Dayan, and she's written the book here, and if I get that right, Before We Were Born. Thank you very much, Kathy Dayan, for coming along the delicious recipe.
Thank you, Del. I appreciate you having me on.
Sure. So let's go into this part there. You've written this book, Before We Were Born, and you were a lawyer beforehand, and now you became, well, you said there, we were just talking before a little bit, that you were writing beforehand. And so how did this book come into fruition?
Okay, so I had been writing most of my adult life, even when I was a practicing attorney. I'm still an attorney, but I don't practice anymore.
Okay.
Um, so I had some spiritual experiences that made me want to write this book, that made me want to tell this story. Um, my husband and I have always pursued our spiritual education together. We met in the 90s. And back then there wasn't, the internet and all the, access to mediums around the world and all that. And so we kind of came to it, the spirituality a little bit through the back door. We were reading things like, Wayne Dyer and Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God, and always really curious about this. We had both lost a parent young in life, and so we were interested in spirit communication, but we hadn't had the experience. Um, I lost one of my sisters. She passed very suddenly, and we had some spiritual experiences that made us even more curious. So the first thing that really happened that I think back on now as a mediumship experience, this is before I had any idea that I had mediumship ability. So my sister had passed, and it was probably 3 months afterward, I had a dream that she came in and she was sitting on the bed next to me, and she was holding my hand and we were talking, and I could see there were two figures standing behind her. I couldn't see their faces, but there was light like all around them. I could see their outline. And we had a conversation, and she said to me, I have to move on. There was some place she needed to go in the spirit realm, but she wanted me to know that she was coming back and that she'd be watching over us. Um, I could see this conversation, happening as if she were in front of me, but I could also watch it like from every point in the room all at once. And when she was done speaking to me, she stood up and she went out through the wall and behind my bed. And the two people that were with her, the figures, went out behind her. And that was a remarkable experience for me because I felt like I had made contact with my sister, or she had made contact with me, would be more like it. So that grew our curiosity. And then another thing happened a couple of years later. One of my good friends from when I was in my teenage years, in my early 20s, he died very suddenly. And I was grieving that loss. I had talked to him about 3 days before, and that was the first time I talked to him in years. And so it really shook me when that happened. And I started getting the sense that he was in the house, in our home. I could feel him. And we decided that we would um, go to a spiritualist church. Are you familiar with spiritualist churches, Del?
Uh, well, I've been involved in many different. I've been baptized in the Roman Catholic Church, the Pentecostal
Yeah.
Church, the United Church. Dealt with a lot of. I've talked a lot of subjects here on spirituality and
Ah,
that, and so and I've had a lot of other guests that have done stuff. So yes, I'm very aware of it there. So
okay.
the
Oh,
spiritual
cool.
church that you went to there, continue.
Oh, okay, sure. So part of their service is they have mediums that come in. That person typically will give a talk, and there's a healing service involved. And then for the last half hour or so, they will call on people and they will bring in their loved ones, and they will,
Hmm.
help you connect. And I had some really good experiences doing that, just,
Hmm.
hearing from other mediums. And then as things kind of built up a little bit more, we were learning more. They had a night where they were doing table tipping. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. It's a physical form of mediumship where you sit around. It's a very small, any kind of pedestal table, really.
Hmm.
And we did this together, my husband and I, and there were two other people at the table. One of them was the pastor of the church, and she's a very good medium too. And so she was picking up on some things while all this was happening and kind of adding to the conversation. But basically, you put your hands on the table very lightly, and you just have an intention for spirit to come in and make contact with you. And this was something we had never even really heard of before. But when the
Hmm.
spirit comes through, if there's enough energy coming through, you can feel the table start to vibrate, and then
Okay.
it rocks. It starts to rock, and
Hmm.
it's really astounding when it happens, because even though we
Okay.
had heard about it, I just didn't think this would happen so clearly. The table started rocking, and then it was almost like it was walking. It came over and it landed on my lap. And
Okay.
it was quite an experience.
Okay.
So we were able to figure out that it was this friend of mine that was
Hmm.
pushing the table. And the way we found that out is as the table's going back and forth, it would tap out words. So it would be one tap is like an A, and two taps is a B, and it's kind of
Right.
a long process, but you can get a communication through. And it just changed our perspective on everything, because this was a physical thing that was happening, showing us
Right.
this connection to the spirit world. So after that, I really set my intention on trying to become a medium, trying to be able to have that kind of contact.
Yep.
And the way that I did that is I meditated as much as I could, as often as I could, with intention.
Hmm.
And I came at it pretty strong, and
Okay.
to the point that my third eye, as it was opening, I ended up with this big bump right here where my third eye is. It was like a physical bump that people would say, "What happened? What's on your head?" And I had no explanation for it, and I had
Hmm.
yeah, I asked one of my sisters about it 'cause she's a nurse, and I told her, "I think it's related to my third eye," and she said, "I've never seen that." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong, but that you may be right." And I started being able to see auras and spirit lights. So there was kind of a bluish light that was in the house, and um, there was just different things that were happening, and I started feeling, pressure on my head,
Hmm.
different sensations on my body.
Right.
Sometimes it feels like spider webs on your skin, and it's someone
Okay.
in spirit just trying to get my attention. And sometimes it feels like Like if you run across a carpet and you get that electric thing in your hair,
Yep,
that
static
feeling?
shock. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Is that. Sometimes I'd get that, and just different contact. So over a period of time, again, I have my husband doing this with me.
Hmm.
We found our own table and we started table tipping and getting messages, and
Hmm.
with time the mediumship developed to the point that I was starting to hear a word or two, and it's like an interior kind of hearing. It's called clairaudience. Um,
Okay.
so so it's something inside you picks up the words. I know that
Hmm.
may sound it's a little difficult to explain. Um, and then eventually, like our spirit friends, we were talking to them a lot and we were getting all this cool information. And then they said, well, Kathy is a medium and we can speak through her. And I started channeling. And we just filled up notebooks with information. And a
Hmm.
lot of that had to do with, um, the idea that the spirit is eternal and the spirit is, it's gonna, all our spirit friends are still around us, our loved ones. And just the idea of death isn't what you think it is. It's a transition. It's not an end. And the people we spoke to and still speak to were really joyful, really in a good place. Some people would come back and they'd say things like, I'm sorry for this that I did, or, but most people were just coming in to say, I'm still here and I still love you. And it was
Right.
just the most uplifting experience. And that made me want to write a story about that.
Right. So if we go back to the beginning part here, because I do have a lot of questions about this, and I'm not
Yeah.
discounting anything that you're saying because I my wife there tells me, says I'm the worst skeptic there is there anyways
Okay.
in a lot of things, and I've experienced some paranormal stuff, and I've talked about it on other shows and stuff like that where I can't explain it and I can't give whether 100% proof to it there, but I just asked you this one part there.
Hmm. Buffering.
Let's just give it
Yeah,
a
there
second.
we are. It just
Okay.
sort of came out there a little bit there. Do you think that when you went from being a lawyer, where everything deals with rationality and stuff there, where it goes into this part of where you had this spirit tipping or with this table there? Because I've dealt with a lot of, I've talked a lot of times about magic. James Randi was a big one there about talking about how manipulation can be done with magic tricks and Banachek and stuff like that. uh, I'm just thinking, where was the part that was there some sort of little thing there that it said that this wasn't a magic trick or something that could have been there where the rationale? And I'm not. I don't want to use the word rationality because that's so wrong. But something that sort of said that this is actually more real than it could be something else. As being a lawyer looking at this.
It was just right in front of my eyes. I don't know what the magic could, yeah, I'm welcome, welcome your interpretation or however you want to see it, because
Yep.
it's not my intention to change anybody's mind about
Sure.
what
Yep.
spirit connections or any of that, because it's such a
Hmm.
personal thing. It
Sure.
really
Yep.
is. It's such a personal
Hmm.
thing. But to me, that first night at that church when the table was moving and we weren't moving that table, and I
Hmm.
knew that, and that was the thing that convinced me. And then
Okay.
after that, when we became able to do that ourselves, and then I started channeling, I don't know what kind of magic that would be, but if it is, it's just as powerful as connecting to spirit, because it's really such a it's a life-changing experience.
Hmm. Well, I don't want to listen. I'm not doubting on your experience at all. No,
Yeah.
I just the skeptic in me there. Anyways, with I'm not saying I'm skeptical about what you're saying there. Period. I'm not saying that at all. And because I think everybody's own interpretation of their reality and what they experience is their own interpretation of there. My reality is different than your reality, and what you experience,
Yeah.
I can't give you a yes or a no or a proof to what I've experienced anything. I can just relate what I sort of felt. So we'll go into this part there is that you've gone into this part about dealing with meditation and opening up the spirit. So as we move this, well, actually, we should explain how your book. How did you write your book? How does the process of your book going through one to the end? Was it go through the part about your initial how you got into this, and then the different little steps? That should probably be the easiest part to go through.
Actually, it's written as a novel, so
Okay,
it's a fictional story, but it's based on these concepts. So the
okay,
concepts of spirit communication specifically, and also reincarnation, because that was another thing that we were talking to spirit about, and
okay,
understanding that souls travel together and they choose to um, either there's spirit families, there's all kinds of different soulmates. They don't have to be romantic, but in this
okay.
case, that's what the book is about. It's about two soulmates who choose to incarnate together.
Oh wow, I find that so interesting there because there's another part there that was in one of the parts there about childhood friends and influences and about soulmates, I guess it would be, and families. And I always sort of wondered this thing, and maybe you can answer this, is that do you wonder about the part about are you soul I don't know, sir, souls linked to families, or are you sort of handcuffed to families that you're in there? And I always wonder the
Yeah.
part there too is that why does anybody that always has parts about talking about reincarnation that they were the Queen of Sheba, or they were the king of something. They were never the lowly goat herder that protect the. Everybody
Uh,
always has.
yeah.
They always had a fantastical. They were the greatest person in past history.
Yeah.
Do you have
That's
anything to that?
Yes, I would say that I had the exact same thought. I agree with you. Um, I didn't have anybody tell me that I was, a famous person or anything like that, just that I had lived different lifetimes and that
Mhm.
certain members of our families, it's all free will. So you're not handcuffed, and you can come
Okay.
into this life if you want to or you don't. So my
Mhm.
story actually opens up in the spirit world, which was
Okay.
the hardest part to write, because it's a huge leap of faith for the reader to come onto that story with me from a place that they can't recognize. Um, but the story begins with the two of them contemplating being born, and one of them wants to come and the other one doesn't. And
Okay.
so he follows her. The woman wants to come, and she has her own reasons for wanting to be here, and he follows just so he could be with her. But he's born into you know, less than ideal circumstances. He chooses the mother based on the fact that she lives on the same street as where his soulmate's going to be born. But the mother
Okay.
is a drug addict and an alcoholic. And so he's born with fetal alcohol syndrome, and he doesn't have the opportunities as they're growing together that his soulmate, Joy, is her name. So this is Jeremy and Joy. Um, and when you also mentioned about childhood friends, and that's a big part of this book, because they have this
Mhm.
really strong connection. So this little boy, he's neglected by his mom, and he doesn't learn to talk until he's 3 or 4 years old. He has these disabilities, and he wanders down the street into her yard. He climbs crawls under the fence, and he befriends this girl, not knowing that they came together. And they
Wow.
just form this strong connection with each other. And their childhood friendship it changes the whole book, the course of their lives.
This is actually really interesting because this is actually pretty cool because this is actually a pretty interesting story. It says they're both there together and one comes down there. I always think about the whole thing about because I have a stepson with autism and
Mm,
uh, I was wondering is that did he come down there and this was what he was the cards that was led to him, right? And I always think about this part there is that when it goes into this whole thing about soul families and soul things like that is my mother actually could have been my daughter in another life, or could have been a friend from somewhere else. How are all these things sort of connected, and are they connected, or do we just perceive because we want that story to be the way that we want our reality to believe that that's the way the story is? But this is actually pretty interesting. So go on with this story. Sorry for interrupting you because I'm
No,
getting
not at all. So the idea, though, is that, you know, it is free will. And he makes kind of a reckless choice, from the spirit world before he gets here because he says, he throws care to the wind and says, I'm coming, and there is guides. There are people around us in spirit and here. And they said to him, choose another mother. And he chose her just because he wanted to be sure, with the way that, contemporary life is, we're not in tribes, we're not in smaller villages or communities. It's he was worried that he wasn't going to find her, and so he
Mhm.
chose this woman. And they grow up together. Her family kind of takes him in because his mother is absent a lot of the time, and so he's really a member of her family until DSS comes and they take him away. And it's what happens to these two kids who are so connected when they're torn apart. And he's gone for years. So it's this whole story about, where their lives go and what happens with them. And then, not to give away everything, but one of them is going to pass over and
Right.
they have to figure out how to communicate.
Wow. Yeah, because there's some sort of school of thought is that we well, there's many schools of thought on this about the reincarnation circle, and there's other different religions and thought on this stuff. There's that different planes of reality of where we go to, and they talk
Mhm.
about that the reason one part about reincarnation is that it's to come back to learn a lesson. But in your story, it seems back it's one part for two people to reconnect on Earth, because on Earth the big question in a religion is that you have free choice, you have free will, and here on Earth is supposed to be the part where you make you whether you learn lessons, but you have the choice there where it's different from angels at which are supposed to be governed. If you go into the religion part, I just want to
Okay,
put it out there for people that are listening there, because
sure.
other people have different faiths and how they perceive things. But I'm not sure how you perceive things. I'll ask you. It says, how do you perceive your own existence here, and what do you think about your presence here in the reality that you exude in and the afterlife, or do you believe there is an afterlife?
I believe there is I believe it's all essentially the same. It's yes, I believe that when we pass over to another realm. But I think that realm is still right here with us. I think it's quieter than we imagine, if that's the right word to say. I think it's almost, stepping from one room into another.
Okay.
It's yeah, that's the way I see it. I just think it's all life. I think they're still in life. It's just that it's not the physical part of it.
Hmm. Yeah, because I always sort of wonder, like, if you figure, what do you have here on the Earth? There are 7.6 billion people,
Mhm.
right? And then to come down, or I guess in your story is to come down, they both come down at the same time in a certain area. I was sort of I find that, how do you define soulmate? I guess maybe that should be the part there, because if somebody that's born here, say that I am here in Canada, and maybe my soulmate was born in Tasmania in Australia, I might
Right.
never ever meet that person.
I think there's a plan before you get here. I do. I think with certain people, there's a plan in place. Um, my husband is from Israel, and
Okay,
I just think he came to the United States to play music, and I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I met him. And 25 years later, he's still my soulmate. He's still my person. Yeah,
well,
and
congratulations.
thank you. And I just think we were going to meet. I just think some things, when you say they're meant to be, I think they're in place ahead of time.
Okay, so you believe in coincidences then? That
I,
there is no randomness. That there's actually sort of there's a sort of a track either right left, and that if you follow down this track, you'll follow down to the path to get to the finale.
I don't know if it's that black and white to me. I think that
Okay.
sometimes you may, if for instance, I had seen my husband once before from sort of
Okay.
afar because he's a musician, and I was at a club with a friend, and I saw him, and I remember watching him leave, and then it came back around in a very random way that I met him again, and I thought, this is not a coincidence. This was going to happen. If I didn't meet him that other time, something in me felt something, a connection when I saw him the first time. And then I met him in a place that I normally would never have gone. And, you know, I just think some things are meant to be. I don't know if I'm so black and white that I'd say there's no such thing as accidents, or I don't think everything is predestined. I don't believe that.
Hmm.
Um, but I think some of these things are pre-thought out by us before we get here. I think we're part of the plan. We help to make that plan.
Wow, that's sort of interesting. That actually goes into every sort of Hollywood Disney movie. There a period that comes around Christmas time where you want to go and get there for the great Christmas dinner and stuff like that, and the person that was someone that you lost a long time ago all of a sudden shows up
Ugh.
on the street at the restaurant as you're picking up that last bit of sweet potato pie that didn't get cooked
Yeah.
because it got burnt, and all of a sudden you run into this person that got my plane was delayed, and I got stuck here overnight because of a snowstorm or a rainstorm, and hey, and that's the part that see now that's the part where I always think about coincidences and then divine intervention. Now
Right.
there's a big difference in those two things,
Mm.
correct?
I got to back up for a minute and tell you, I'm not crazy about romances, even though I wrote this story. I, so I'm listening to you. I'm like, gosh, I hope that's not how my book comes across. But it's a love story for sure, but it's not a
Mhm.
romance. It's not. There isn't a formula. It's not a everything is. I'll tell you, when I before I started writing this, my idea about the book was I wanted to have one of the main characters in the book die and have that be a happy ending.
Wow. Oh, that's actually pretty good there. That's sort of really twisted up a bit because then you always have. See now this is the part. This is what I find interesting there. I'll let you think about this because you didn't write this into your story, I don't think, anyways. But just to get your thought on this is that so one person dies, the other person goes on and lives the rest of their life and meets somebody else that they could have met past beforehand in some sort of alternate time universe because time is not linear that we see it here on Earth,
Right,
but it's
right.
whatever. And they could have met somebody else and then forgotten about the person that they just were down here on this spiel that they were with here, and they met the other person that they were supposed to be with or connected to. I always find that sort of interesting. I don't know. I
Yeah,
know it's I know you didn't write
yeah.
about that part about it. That's a little bit of a twist, but that's why I always find this thought and part about family connections, like you were saying about you were talk where you got to this part where you became before you became a medium and with this table and somebody came through to you, and this is don't get me wrong, I'm not discounting anything. I always wonder about who is coming through to you. Somebody can from the other side can say whoever they are. How do
Mhm.
you know?
How do you know it's them?
Yes, that's the big question because I've dealt with this with a paranormal survivor with that me and my wife that were on there. You
Yeah,
that we like you don't know because there's been lots of talks that things mimic to
yeah,
deceive, and I
right.
always sort of wonder that.
I have wondered it too. I mean, to me, I guess it comes down to like my gut. So there
Okay.
have been times when we've been communicating and I just will shut it down. I'll say it doesn't feel
Mm.
right. It really is just it's a leap of faith, and you just kind of have to be able to gauge it by your own gut, what it feels right.
Right. Yeah, that's I find that totally. I find all this stuff that's sort of interesting when I'm dealing. Like I've been into looking into things with cryptids. I don't know if you're aware of what cryptids are. Like little people, like little small guys, like this guy or
Yeah.
Bigfoot, and different things like that. Paranormal, because me and my wife there, we had an experience with paranormal, and that's dealing with the spiritual. And this whole this station deals with. UFO paranormal research and paranormal and different things, the aspect of interdimensional and a whole
Mhm.
bunch of different categories in that. And I find this all sort of interesting of how people in view from their own perspective of what they are perceiving. And so you got it through there, but also your husband there that you had it for 25 years had a similar experience, the same thing that you did, correct?
Right. Yes. So
Yeah.
we had each other to talk things through too, as this was progressing, and it was a slow progression. This it was
Okay.
I mean, it was over years it took us to get all, to get to the point where we were able to really get good, clear messages. And even then, it depends on, the spirits will come through me, and it depends
Mhm.
on, what kind of day I'm having, or how, if I'm tired, I don't do it, or if I'm just feeling kind of, not so buoyant, not so happy, I'm not going to do it because I feel like we attract, positive with positive. And I also
Mhm.
feel like just my own clarity, um, I need to be, not have my mind interfering
Yeah.
because it can, very easily.
Mhm. Okay. A question there. It says, the spirit. Do you talk to the same spirit all the time?
No.
No. So do they tell you their name at all,
Yes.
or who they are, and where they're like? Because I'm not okay. Goes off another part because some people they conflate or they sort of mix up. They think that spirit they're talking to could be alien, and some think that they're angelic, or some think that there's something else or interdimensional. So are and some think that they are past people that lived on the earth and are sort of reoccurring and giving messages or something like that as they're looking down. Can you explain any of the ones that you have encountered or talked to or conversed with?
They're primarily family members or friends that
Okay.
come through. I am pretty clear about, that's who I'm open to, as I'm beginning a communication. I don't really, I don't, want anything other than pure love. If
Hmm.
someone's here out of love for us, then I'm open and I'll listen to them. I have, also just a comment. I have had some, visual confirmation of people. So
Okay.
as I was learning to communicate, um, yeah, I'm not a great mental medium, so I don't see very well. But when I was first opening up, I saw a lot more in terms of, I'll get a flash of a person, and
Hmm.
sometimes that's someone I know, like someone that I know that's passed over, and
Right.
in the beginning there, when I was really just, kind of opening up, I'd be walking through the grocery store, I'd be told something, and all of a sudden, bam, I'd see someone's face in front of me. And I
Hmm.
think it was someone who was trying to get through to someone near me, in the store or wherever I
Hmm.
was, that kind of thing. But the visual stuff is, um, it does make me feel more self-assured about who I'm talking to,
Right.
my family members, that kind of thing.
Wow. I when you said there a flash and a vision there, that sort of just totally just brought me back to a point back when I was 18 years old. I'm 52 now, so this is back a long time ago.
Sure.
Anyways, I was visiting a person down in another town, and her husband had died, and we had gotten together and stuff like that. And one night, I was leaving the bedroom, going to the bathroom, and this face appeared right in the hallway, and I was like, "Boom!"
Wow.
This like shocked me, right. But he had a smile, and
Yeah.
and don't draw very well, but I drew a picture of this face there the next morning of what I had saw, and she says, "Oh, that's my husband that was killed, knocked off the road by a drunk driver that went off the cliff."
Whoa.
And I went, "Holy jumping!" I says, "Well, that's the person I saw last night at 2 o'clock in the morning in the
Yes.
hallway going to the bathroom." And see, I've been sort of into this whole thing of like, I don't discount everything, but I'm very very skeptical about a lot of things there, because I do read a lot of magic books, and I follow a lot of people and how things can sort of be perceived, and especially with the gypsies. And I do have gypsy blood a little bit in me, being part Ukrainian and part Cree Indian, and everything that's in there. But how people can sort of change things, and don't get me onto the whole thing about these televangelists, because I'll go on for an hour about
Oh,
that sort of
yeah.
stuff there. But but I find this sort of, everybody sort of has a sort of a, there's a little common thread that goes along there with something that they're connecting to, something that you cannot, and I cannot sort of rationalize in a way. Is that the right word to say that? It's sort of like you can't prove it, correct?
Mhm.
And
You know,
you just feel it yourself, that you can feel it yourself, that it's true to you, that you're seeing there. And that's why I asked the question at the beginning, is that how does your rational lawyer mind sort of go to that, into this spiritual mind, or this
yeah.
part there? That's sort of the question I'm sort of asking.
Well, I guess I don't feel like I need to prove it. I don't want to convince anybody of anything, you know?
Hmm.
I've had these experiences that I believe that have changed my life,
Yeah,
and I you know, it's made my life better, and, you know,
that's perfect.
it is, I mean, and that I know it's a different part of, not even the mind really, it's just living with your spirit. I try to follow
Hmm.
my spirit. When I was a practicing attorney, I feel like, the brain is the, dominant thing. Like, you get very kind of, you rely on this mind as being this, very strong instrument. And I think it kind of can get in the way of the spirit if the spirit is talking to you. And my spirit
Right.
was just, I mean, I had so many experiences happening. I'd be dropping off to sleep at night and I'd see, my mom who'd passed over. I'd see her like smiling at me, and different things that were happening that I couldn't deny, So to
Hmm.
me, I already have a strong sense of this, but I don't really, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. That's not why I wrote the book. I just wanted
Yeah.
to, I just wanted to put out a story that was built on the bones of this information, that the spirit continues. It really is what I believe. But it's not a nonfiction book. It's a novel, and people can read it and hopefully like the story, and they don't have to take any of my ideas and make them theirs. You know,
Right.
we all have our own path to walk, and this is my path that I've chosen, and it's more comfortable for me than the lawyer path. I'm
Yeah.
just it just is, and I'm happier this way. But excuse me, but it really, I think everybody has to find their own path.
Oh, that's exactly right, and that's what this whole show is. We just throw information in the pot, and people take a
Yeah,
little bit out of there that they have there, and they know what they can take with what they have, make their own recipe, take their own little part. And that's the thing, is about just
yeah,
opening up and sharing to a thing there. Like, even though the way that you've written this there, whatever, that's sort of semi you and semi whatever fiction part of the book out of there. There's little parts out of there that can go, that. People can sort of say, well, maybe this is something that sort of connects to me. And that's what my
yeah,
show is all about. Is just
mhm,
eating food and enjoying, and just well, it's not actually eating food, but just
yeah.
dealing with ingredients of life. So we'll go into this part here, is that, so soulmates and families. This is one part that I sort of wanted to talk to, and the childhood friend and influences. Uh, you talked about that. Can you talk a little bit on that there at all?
Well, that was there's a Stephen King quote there, and it's something to the effect of I never again had friends like I had when I was 12 years old. And I think that
Oh,
that
Stand
is,
By Me, right? Is that
yeah,
from the?
Stand By Me.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that that's an impressive, sentence to me,
Hmm.
because I think most of us can relate to that. I grew up with a really tight group of friends in our neighborhood, and I just kind of took it for granted, as a kid. Maybe we all do. You don't know that life isn't going to be like that, forever. Things change, and as an adult, there's just life gets in the way. You don't have as much openness with the people in your life. At least that's how I feel. Whereas when you're a
Hmm.
kid, you just everything is trust, and you know you have these bonds. Um, so part of that in my story is these two kids who really, keep each other on the right path, and they have this tremendous like faith in each other. And that's what that was. That comment about your friends when you're 12 years old.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I have similar friends. We call ourselves WMD. Right? There's Willie Martindale. So weapons of
Uh,
mass destruction. So we've known each
uh,
other since high school, and still up to 50 in our 50s. There, we still are the same weapons of mass destruction
oh
today.
wow,
When you said that quote there, that part there from the movie Stand By Me, because that was the whole part that he's reliving his childhood, and he still dealt with his friends. He still sort of semi kept in contact with them years and years and years later on, when he had
right,
written or was telling the story about them going out to find the dead body.
right.
Yeah. So, so, so how did you find the part there with childhood friends and influences? How did that go and affect anything into the story or into your own life?
Oh, well, part of it is because, this guy, friend of mine that passed over, and I thought
Mhm.
he was in my house, and I was feeling his spirit nearby, and it was not so much a childhood, but a teenage friend, and,
Mhm.
when he passed, I really didn't, I was surprised by how much I grieved his passing, because I hadn't seen him in forever, and
Mhm.
but there was still a connection there. And it made me think a lot about the people who had influenced my life when I was a younger person, and before I sort of went off into the world and did my thing, walked my path.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and I think that those people that we grow up with have tremendous influence on us.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I even think about the same thing. Is that by going this direction, I probably never would have met the people that I met if I would have
Mhm.
made the one decision there. That's always the story. I guess that's the big story. If you take the left path or the right path, not left or right, or I'm
Right,
not saying
right.
that right or wrong, but I'm saying east or west, and
Sure.
where do you end up? Right? And I going back to the whole part about the soulmate part there with the story in your book, there is that if the one character family decides to go off to Hawaii, they never end up being in the same place. Or
Yeah, I don't know all the keys here to the universe, but some some things I think just find a way to work.
yeah,
I do believe that. And I think if you plan it, it does happen that way before you get here. But you can't plan for everything, which is part of what I talk about in the book. So Jeremy is this little boy, and
mhm,
he has the fetal alcohol syndrome, and he just has trouble learning. He's not severely affected, but his friend Joy is
mhm,
very intelligent, and so when they're small, she reads to him, and they're really more like siblings. And then
yeah,
as they're getting older, she's getting moved into the advanced classes, and he's getting held back, and they're
right,
moving away from each other. So it's not going the way they planned,
mm,
and I don't want to give away the whole story, but it's not all this little like, everything falls in line because they chose to come together. So
mhm.
some of those questions are things that I wanted to talk about, because free will is always gonna come into play.
Yeah, that comes to actually into three parts. There you got free will, you have choice, and then you have divine intervention or some sort of extra manipulation that sort of moves something, whether it's positive, negative, evil, or good, that can go and do it. Like if you remember any part of the story of Job that was in the Bible, where Satan went and did everything he could to Job there to get his falling away from God or love of God. But any of those little parts there, they all sort of intertwine into that. And now, is that you have in my own reality, because I'm not saying your reality, my reality, looking at this is that how much are we actually have free will, uh, or is it like the Matrix where the plan is already there and it's just the pick a story A or B and you keep on going on, but all the story has been written.
Oh, in my mind, in my opinion, and that's all it is. But I think it's all free will.
Is it okay? So there is no part that anybody's writing the next chapter that can go and say where the next path goes.
Somebody else other than us, no.
Yeah, see, that's sort of that's an interesting conundrum, because that's the part there's you have to wonder about that when you talk about time travel. I know this is going off topic there, and people that go back into time and then timelines and how they go and they sort of intercede with the story. I don't know. There seems to be a lot of stuff there coming out through Hollywood and through media, and that with this whole thing with mysticism, time travel, and changing
Yes.
things, and that. I know your book isn't about that, but I always sort of find all of this stuff totally interesting.
Hmm.
So I want to go and okay. The name of your book is Before We Were Born,
Yes.
and the book is there. And where can you find this book?
Well, it's going to be released in the United States on January 3rd on
Okay.
Amazon. So that's on Amazon. Um, it's already available in the UK. It came out in December, earlier in December.
Hmm. Awesome. There, yeah, that's where Gavin there. So that's how I got your name there
Yeah.
to talk about this. Have you written any other books, or more books to come?
I am right now writing the sequel to this book.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, it's got a different take on soulmates. It's more based on brotherhood. It's not. I don't want. It's not as much of a romantic story. Although
Okay.
there will be elements of that, but I really wanted to think about how other relationships are really just as important. They're just different, and so these characters are going to meet again
Hmm.
under different circumstances. Yeah.
Well, that's the big thing there is if you look at, I'm not saying to go and put anything into your book there, but the whole thing about buddies or friends, guy friends versus female friends, there's a total connection that is sort of I guess sort of goes different than being soulmates, of being star-crossed lovers and stuff like that. Whereas buddies
Yeah.
will ride or die, and I'm not sure
Right.
how the female. I'm not a female, so I can't comment on that part there, but anyways, out of that, is there any site that they can check you out there, Kathy Dayan there? They can check out your book, or pre-order, or do anything like that, or follow you?
Sure. So my website is Kathleen with the K, Ready Diane, which is Dayan, .com. And I have a Facebook page under the same name, Kathleen Ready Diane. Um, Short of that, you can pre-order right now on Amazon.
Awesome. That's a good gift for you people out there listening there. Get something there for Christmas, and it'd probably come around Ukrainian New Year's, which is in January, or
Okay.
Chinese New Year's and all that stuff there. Because everybody, every civilization has their own Christmas and New Year's, seems to be. I guess everything keeps on changing with us and their own stuff. But to get to this part there at the end of the show, I want to thank you very much there, Kathy, for being on the show. This is very interesting. I check out more about your book there, because it's actually an interesting story, and I encourage anybody out there that's listening here on UPRN, listen to the Delicious Recipe, to pick up this book. And for also for the people out there listening there, next week we're in between Christmas and New Year's. I wore my I don't even know what this Rudolph shirt there for Christmas. And Christmas is just a couple days away. And I will have a show there next week between Christmas and New Year's. I'm not sure what it's going to be, probably sort of a year-end sort of show. And I want to thank my trusty trio now. Thank God that we have a trio there. And they did everything very good for the show. And I want to thank you again there, Kathy, for being on there. This is the Delicious Recipe, and we'll see you all next week in between Christmas and New Year's. Have a good one.
Thank you, Del.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.